but I'm going to go ahead and introduce our speaker. Today, our topic is on motivating and engaging your team. So we have an incredible speaker with us tonight to give us her thoughts and perspective on this topic. So Dr. Kim Leveridge is the Senior Director of Learning and Professional Development at the Oklahoma Center for Nonprofits. She is an exceptional authority on organizational leadership and effectiveness and has experience and expertise that includes strategic execution, management of work teams, executive and professional coaching, research and analysis, design and delivery of workshops, and programs and client relations. Yielding a rare perspective on leadership effectiveness and individual differences in organizations, Dr. Leveridge's career includes operations management of consulting and hospitality companies, business development, and human resources experience, and a comprehensive education and research background. Dr. Leveridge has extraordinary leadership skills and a reputation for building trust, getting things done, and using measurement to drive decision-making. And with that, I want to welcome Dr. Leveridge to our session, and thank you so much for being here with us tonight.
Thank you so much, Faith. That was kind of you to give everyone my bio there. I also want to tell you all that I lived in Tulsa for a very long time. I live in Oklahoma City now, but I was in Tulsa for a very long time, and I worked at Williams and Nordam, among other things. So if there's any of you there, hi. But I'm glad to be hanging out with some Tulsa folks this evening. I am going to share, as is expected, my screen. Hi, this is what we're going to talk about today, motivation and engagement. Basically, we're going to cover why it matters, what are some motives that you might not be thinking about that you could be thinking about, and then how we might think about motivating others, which I think is the primary reason we're here. But first, I want you to put something in chat. I don't care what it is. It can be an emoji. It can be a comment. It can be a photo you took. Just something. Just chat me. I'm going to pause for a second. I really appreciate it. I see all of these lovely messages. I'm excited to be here. So I asked you to do that. And a lot of you did. And some of you maybe didn't. The ones that did, that's compliance. I asked you to do something, you did it. I love the messages I received. So thank you for that. But that does not necessarily indicate anything other than compliance. What you want to do is move people beyond that. I see a raised hand. Hi, Veronica.
Hello, that was on accident. Sorry.
Okay, it's great to see you. Just wanted to make sure. So I just wanted to think about the difference between motivation and compliance. We have authority in our organizations, and we can ask people to do things and they may do them. But we want them to do it in a way that is engaged and enthusiastic and, air quote, motivated. So why do we want a motivated workforce? Not simply a workforce where the people comply based on their job descriptions, but why do we want a motivated workforce? Here's the answers. Research shows that motivated employees always look for better ways to do a job. That single thing would probably pay for itself in efficiency, outcomes, production, et cetera. So they're going to be more productive. That's one of the things on the list. They're going to be more quality oriented. And this, we've all seen so much of in the last year and a half, how important it is. They're more resistant, more resilient in the face of change. So one of the things that's really important to remember about motivation is that it's personal, which means it takes a little bit of effort to kind of figure out what it's about. And when we think about attracting and hiring staff, we're asking them to join us on a journey, on a trip. Like, how is that road trip going to end up for them? Is it going to be an excellent adventure, or is it going to be a long, strange trip? And one of the things we want to do is think about the life cycle of our staff. And when we do that, then we can plan accordingly. So as you look at this graphic and you see, I mean, obviously we all know the first step is to attract the staff member that we want, the employees that we want. Selection, engagement. See, engagement is that key middle piece right as a person gets settled into their role, where they become confident in the expectations, they become confident in the ways that an organization does things, how they communicate, what the culture is telling them. That engagement is what leads to retention. It's not just hiring the right people, which is an important first step. Having a hiring process and a selection process that is robust and yields us good results is very important. But once they're in the door, that engagement is really the critical piece for longevity and that commitment that we want to see from folks. So what are the factors that engage people? Well, paychecks, bonuses, and perks clearly are something that we're all looking for. None of us are working because we just want to do it for fun. We may work because it's fun, but we also need a paycheck. We also need our perks. So that's kind of one thing that hangs out there that all of us are expecting, but that's not going to be the key difference in engagement. Performance reviews are also very important for the process, for keeping a workplace that is engaging. You know, we could spend a whole day talking about the best ways to do talent management and performance management. So we aren't doing that today, but it is a key part of how we keep our staff engaged. And the short answer on that is consistent communication, clearly delivered often is the key to good performance reviews. The work itself can be engaging. We might just love what we're doing. I think one of the rare gifts of being in the nonprofit sector where I currently am working, I haven't always been in the nonprofit sector, is that you have a mission that gives you that spark. You know, you have something that the mission is not about making money for the organization. The mission is serving people. The mission is social justice. The mission. So what is the work in your organization that leads to people feeling satisfied? And are you tying the work to the mission of the organization? Does a person know that the task they're doing, that tidying up of a spreadsheet that they're doing is actually going to make a difference in the big strategy of the organization? So it's important to tie the work itself to meaningful things. The organization matters. Sometimes people have a dream organization that they'd like to work for. And what is your reputation? You know, the goal is to have people who, when people leave our organization, they are alumni versus exes. Two different connotations. So we want our organization to have that passive recruiting potential that comes from being a well-loved place to work. Is there a future for me in this organization? The future is another factor in an engaging workplace. Do I have a path? Do I care about a path? And if I do I have one? And then finally, obviously, a leader makes a big difference in the engagement in an organization. So you can have a person who comes on board who's highly motivated, really loves the organization, gets to that point where they're engaged and feeling a part of the work, and then has a crappy leader, which is why you're all in Leadership Tulsa. I realize I'm not speaking to crappy leaders, but I'm just saying the leader can be the final kind of bow on the gift to make sure. So we want to make sure as leaders that we're able to provide a workplace that allows a person to express themselves in the ways they like, to experience work in the ways they like, etc. The only way to do that is to know our people. So relationship building is also a big part of this as leaders. But okay, having said all that, So what are some things that people might have as motivators individually? What is the intrinsic driver for a person that is different than the paycheck, the work itself, or the organization? So we're going to jump into a few of those now. So here's a 6 broad categories of things that energize and motivate people. Oh, can you see something in front of my other? Yeah, there we go. Okay, so these are not like personality. This is like, think of it as the heart. Like, what is it that makes me satisfied as a person? Sometimes when we're feeling fidgety, like we have times in our careers where we just feel like things aren't quite right, we're kind of fidgety. Maybe a change is in order, maybe something just isn't quite right at work. Oftentimes we can think about, oh gosh, what is it that I care about a lot that I'm not getting? So for example, I might be an achievement-oriented person who is driven to achieve. And if my efforts are being held back by internal bureaucracy or too many approvals or just an over collaboration or too many cooks in the kitchen or whatever millions of reasons that we could come up with why my need to achieve is being squelched, then you're going to have trouble motivating me beyond that, because that is what matters to me. So the key is to find out what it is that people care about and try to provide that for them in some way. It's not to say we want to fit people into boxes. We want to learn more. We want to find out what makes them tick. I know I've had many times in my life where someone is just, you know, the potential is there and they're just not quite getting it. And sometimes it's figuring out what they need, because people aren't going to always come and tell you. So let's talk about kind of each of these and how it would play out in a particular scenario. So achievement, we use that as my first example. Achievement, motive. These are people who are driven to personally accomplish significant outcomes. And so what is the significant outcome? I mean, so it would mean things that matter. I want to work on things that matter. That's what that means. I was just noticing this slide is hard to see. That second is takes initiative as the second check, in case you can't read that. I'm going to make a note about that. So they will tend to take initiative. So let's think about how that can play out sometimes. Sometimes people can be really excited about an idea and be willing to take an initiative and be told, we're not doing that right now. That's too much. So just being aware that when someone is expressing an interest, an idea, there may be other things underneath that. And the ways that we manage that can either encourage it to happen again in the future or discourage it. And when we discourage something, are we then causing a level of disengagement? So it's good to think, just make sure we're centered and thinking about how we're responding to folks, especially when they're enthusiastic. Achievement-oriented people will like a challenge, and they oftentimes will exceed expectations. So when you hear this, you think, well, why doesn't everyone just want a bunch of achievement-oriented people on their teams? What would be some potential watch-outs for achievement-oriented people? I'm asking that, not expecting you to actually answer me. You know, they may push themselves a lot, or others, because of their need to achieve. So if they're leading a smaller team with them, we want to make sure we're tuning into kind of what the workload is looking like, and are we managing this appropriately? That enthusiasm can lead them to take on too much. They might inadvertently then stress other people out because they're trying to achieve. So it's just being aware that, what am I seeing? So say you're an achievement-oriented person is really going strong and they're pushing themselves a lot. rather than just correcting that behavior, maybe trying to find out what it is that's leading them to feel that way. We're not going to make a goal. We're not going to, but you have to know that there's an achievement drive there to even pose the question to kind of figure it out. So we may just misread people's actions because of what we're assuming is motivating them. So that's just a pregnant pause while I turn the page here. So the second one we showed you was autonomy. So these are people who want to be independent in their work. So they'll act independently. They'll seem to be self-sufficient. They're not going to ask for help because they would prefer to do it themselves. They may have some creativity. They may be out-of-the-box thinkers. And they'll be individualistic. So it's possible that someone like this might seem to never want to be part of the team, but then suddenly come in with a brilliant idea. Or, you know, they'll just have their own way of doing things. And if you have a person who's on your staff who has a high autonomy motive, and you are, just by, you know, coincidence, how Mother Nature made you, a control person or a micromanager, then now we have a bad match between the two. And it could lead to just misunderstandings. So, you know, because a person who has high autonomy is going to feel like they're being suffocated by someone who tends to follow structure and order and be very detail oriented. And this would just be different styles of working and different things we care about. So it can be very tedious to an autonomous person working with someone who is more kind of wrapped up in collaborating and all the things, being involved in all the things. A watch out for someone who is autonomous would be coming across as uninterested in what the team is doing. So that would be our perception of how this is. They may avoid volunteering for projects, or, you know, tend to be late or dislike meetings and grumble a lot about that. Understanding that there's not a way necessarily to just say, well, then fine, you don't ever have to come to meetings, because that's not necessarily practical. It's helping to help the person know which ones they can skip, helping them to be confident in their autonomy while also compromising from time to time as needed. We don't need to have every single person in every meeting. And so understanding that this could make a big difference in someone's engagement might lead us to just look at something a little differently. So the idea of this session is just to begin by looking at things a little differently. What is motivating my staff? What do they care about? Am I in any way giving them what they would really like to have? So that's the questions that hopefully you'll be kind of thinking about as we go through these. The next one that we could use as an example is power influence. So these are people who are going to seek out opportunities for recognition, but they also like to be in control. That power piece. So it's not just influencing, but the power piece too. The influence side of this, it will enjoy supporting the greater good, but they're going to do it from a place of power and influence. They want to lead things versus sitting on the sidelines and cheering or, you know, volunteering in less impactful ways. And they're also very likely energized by public recognition, which is that middle bubble that is a little difficult to see in case you're having trouble seeing that. It says, energized by public recognition. They will sometimes emerge as an informal leader and have you going, how did that happen? Because that's just what they do. It's something that they enjoy. If you have a project that you need led, these are folks that will enjoy leading a project. They also very likely are interested in advancement. And, you know, there's going to be people on your team that don't care about advancement, but when there's a power influence motive, they definitely do. And if that's true, what opportunities do you have in your organization to allow someone to grow in their career? In a smaller business, that's not always easy to promise someone. There may not actually be a path. So we have to think about other ways to help them get that same charge they would get if they could climb up, by finding other ways to help motivate them and engage them in the work. The next one is relationship motive. So these are people who are looking for opportunities to build relationships. These are folks that you will see oftentimes chatting with coworkers. They work the room a lot. They're going to build rapport. If you have to go into a tough sales meeting or a client meeting or something, having someone who has this driver is a good person to have on your team, because they're going to be able to go in and naturally kind of work the room, or they're going to be interested in working the room. They may have to work on their skills, but that's a different point. They tend to be open in communication, kind of self-disclosing, and they really do like to develop relationships at work. You can think of a lot of situations where this motive could get fed. One of the things that comes to mind for me is, a lot of organizations have a celebration committee or some kind of, special taking care of the staff committee. This is a perfect person to be in charge of making sure that others are well appreciated and birthdays are acknowledged and that type of thing. But anytime that you have a person with a relationship drive, it's good to think about, where do we have them working, for example. So if you have someone who's highly motivated by social interaction, building relationships, having conversations, and you put them in a space where they're isolated from everyone, you've now created a disengagement moment, and you've separated them from the things that they enjoy. So yes, it can be a little bit of work to kind of figure out what makes everyone tick, but it can also pay off tenfold in the engagement that you receive and the retention. I think we're all desperately looking for tricks for keeping people right now, because in this period of the great resignation that's happening across the country. So all of these little things that we can do where we are tending to our people can make a huge difference. They end up being big things. I said they're little things, they're really not. So then security motive is, oh, sorry, I was going to say something about relationship motive. What would be a watch out? A watch out might be getting them to focus on tasks versus people. So there may be a time or two with people like this where you have to say, hey, okay, so we've got to stop all the conversation and actually do the work, because they may tend to kind of be comfortable in the collaboration phase of everything and have trouble moving on to the actual execution phase. So that can be a watch out for the relationship motive. The next one is security motive. This is individuals who are looking for safety and want to know that things are going to be okay. So that can be about money, for example. It could be about, and this is a scenario where the need for pay actually ties into what makes me happy. So sometimes it's about making sure I have enough income to be able to support my family. But it could also be a discomfort with change. So if you have a big change initiative coming, say you're going to merger or acquisition phase, or maybe a reorg of a restructuring of the organization, something like that can really cause someone with high security motives to struggle. And so we want to make sure we communicate a lot. what we're doing, why, what the plans are, so that they can see there's some continuity possible. In the end, what happens with high safety and security motivated people is you end up with a pretty loyal and reliable staff member once they feel like they're in that zone where they can be, they feel like they're steady employment and that they don't have to worry. And a lot of folks like this will end up in healthcare, for example, because of that, or government jobs where you feel that stability. But when you're dealing with someone who seems to be struggling with change, keep in mind that it could be about this. They just need to know they're going to be okay. Okay. So then we also have balance, comfort, motive. These are people who place equal emphasis on work and non-work. And we know that that's one of the growing trends, in particular, starting with millennials and into Gen Z, is a lot more focus on this. So we should all kind of pay attention because it's not going away. So we want to make sure, and actually it's a really good thing. I'm super excited about it because we spend way more of our lives at work than anywhere else anyway. So let's try to get some balance going. So they're going to place equal emphasis on both of those things. They will tend to be demotivated by too much stress, too much like just keep going, keep going, keep going. And they prefer work that they enjoy. In case you can't see that, that's what that says. So sometimes they'll seem more laid back, where they'll, like, why are they always leaving at 4:45? I haven't left until 6 for 3 months. Well, because that's what matters to them, is that they have this balance in their lives. I can use one of our, someone who just retired from our organization, Jerry Wright, would come in at, his hours were sort of 7-ish to 4. He would come in before anyone else was here. And I used to think that was kind of cool that, maybe I could do that too. My problem is that when 4 would come, I wouldn't necessarily leave if I came in at 7, right? Because I'm achievement oriented. So I'm like, push, push, push. He was so good at he took a lunch every day. He would leave and be gone a whole hour, come back. And at 4 o'clock, the man had his backpack on his back and he was out the door. And we all knew that, and that's how he worked. He had a balanced comfort motive and he made it happen. Never missed certainly if there was a consulting gig or whatever and he had to work more hours, certainly he did. But as far as that day-to-day habit, this is how he lived his life. And this is not that difficult. And although it seems unusual to us because of our kind of capitalistic culture, society, the way we work, we need to be accepting of the fact that people do this and they do a really good job of it. And just like we're learning now, working from home is very important to people. So this is just another way for us to look at, just because we've always done it a certain way doesn't mean it can't be done another way. And that's where these motives can really help us to understand people when they seem to be doing it differently than everyone else. But balance and comfort motive is they want flexible hours. They want to have plenty of time for their non-work activities, and they'll make it happen. So we have to provide space for that. Okay, so that's the list of some other ideas that we can think about when it comes to what's actually motivating people. And then we can think about, we have the individual and we have the organizational environment. Picture for a second a financial company that helps people with their investments. Just picture that. I'm telling you to do this. I'm hoping you're compliant. Picture. I don't know what motivates you, but I'm hoping you're compliant. So picture the financial services organization, and now picture a child care organization. Would you expect that they would have different cultures? And I'm assuming your heads are all nodding in agreement. And that is because the work is different and the people who go to work there have different ways of working. So the person that is interested in going to work at a financial services organization is probably going to be more achievement, power oriented. et cetera, et cetera. And then the other side of things, they're going to be more balanced comfort, safety, et cetera. So you can start to imagine vocationally how an organization will have a certain vibe. So it can even be these motives that we carry can influence the whole culture, because the drivers of the leadership, the executive team especially, will start to drive the culture of the organization and what we're appreciating and what we're not appreciating. So all of this is tied to culture. So if your organization is predominantly power influence motivated, that's going to be networking, going to galas, going to that conference where all the salespeople are, doing all the things that are out there, getting noticed. Whereas if it's more balanced, comfort motivated, you'll notice that things kind of wrap up around 5 o'clock, and that's it for the day. So I'm just saying, know that this actually becomes pervasive in the organization if there's a lot of folks who are very similar. And then when the person comes in that's a little different, it can feel hard. Hope that makes sense to you. I mentioned earlier that motivation is personal. So what we mean is that we're all different. We're motivated at different times by different things. Many things about our personality are stable and steady and stay the same through our lifespan. These can change. And when you think about, for example, I can give an example from my own personal experience. I went through most of my career kind of making moves like everyone does. And then I hit 2016, and between 2016 and 2017, I lost my job twice. Got a job, lost it. So lost a job, and then got a job, and then lost it, and then was on the job hunt again. I have a resume, I have an education, and it was hard to find a job both times that I lost my job in that period of time. I know that made me more oriented towards safety and security than I have ever been in my life. So I'm just using that as an example for you of how these things can change through our lifespan based on our life experiences, because at different times in our life, we care about different things. It won't happen overnight per se, but I just want you to know that people will change, including you, that you may look back on 10 years ago, you cared about things that are different than today. So I want to mention that. And it's personal. You won't always know until you get to know folks. So the great leaders will work to get to know what it is that is driving someone's performance. So I want you all to think for a second about each of these types of motives that I mentioned, and I can put that back on the screen if you need me to. But I want you to just take a second and think about each of those motives. Think about your staff. And ideally, maybe you'll do this later, but think about your staff and say, what do I think maybe is making, Bill tick? What evidence have I seen? When does Bill get excited about the work that he's doing? When does Jody perk up? What type of tasks are we doing when I see some real energy out of my folks? That's the beginning of knowing what the spark is and what they care about. And then then have some conversations about that with them and see if you can make some progress on the way that you approach them and the way that you even think about the work in your department and how it gets divvied out. Who should be the project lead on that and why? Who really wants this opportunity to achieve and hasn't had a chance? Think about those types of ideas and questions when you think about your team. And as you build your team, what can you provide for them that would allow them to grow in ways they haven't been able to. Because they won't always tell you, they don't even know they should be telling you. And that's what leadership is providing that protection and cover so that they can come to you and be like, I really want to do this. And you have an opportunity, and you be able to say, I want you to do this. So let's see if we can make this happen. Okay, I think I just have one more slide. So we talked in the beginning about, you think about the journey that your staff is on from the moment they walk in the door until they leave. So in order to retain and engage, we want to not leave the talent unappreciated, underappreciated, or without direction. So we want internal resources for them. So you have someone that's really interested in growing into a new role. Who could you have mentor them? Do you have people who need maybe some coaching right now? That just a couple of sessions with a coach might turn the tables for them. Is there training you could send them to? I mean, I run a training department at the Oklahoma Center for Nonprofits. We joke that we run a small college, and we're just a little place here in Oklahoma. I guarantee you can find some training for your people that's affordable, and you should. And I would encourage you to budget for engagement, because that's how you retain them. So budget for engagement. Part of that is a training budget or development budget or some internal resources for them to use in their career. Second, stretch goals. So we talked about performance management ever so briefly. That's part of it. Give them something to work for. And how does it tie in to the work of the organization? When you meet this goal, what will it do for us? What will it do for our stakeholders? And how important is this work that you're doing? Career path. Do they want to grow in their career? Some people don't. And then you offer them a promotion and they go, ew, no thanks. So what do they want? And is the only way for them to make more money a promotion? Because that might also create some issues with engagement down the road. Can they advance in their career in ways other than leadership? What do they want to learn? Are you going to send them to training that's something you want them to learn? That's fine. But what about what they want to learn? So taking the time to get to know what the dreams and goals of your staff are will lead you to be a better leader when you can motivate them in the ways that they care about versus what is our typical, you're a nail and I have a hammer. Instead, we want to say, are you a bolt? Are you a screw? Like, what are you? And how can I help you to grow in the ways that you want to grow? And then obviously succession planning. I mean, I think most talent development departments have a succession plan, but how does your staff see themselves in that? Would they like to be someone that is considered an option for promotion down the road? Just have those conversations. And also, would they be terrified if they found out that you had put them on a succession plan and it has zero interest for them? Because that's also disengagement. So the moment that you have a staff member, an employee, a manager, whoever, that is disengaged, they are part of the way out the door, potentially, if you can't get them back into the engaged place they were before. So that's it. That's all I got. I'm going to stop sharing. Oh, I should show you. This is who we are. This is how you contact us. I'm at K Leveridge at OKCNP if you need anything. Here's my stop share. Okay.
Thank you so much, Kim. That was super enlightening for me, thinking back on the places I worked. I'm like, okay, this person is definitely comfort motivated. Like, that explains a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
I'm going to go ahead and open it up. Anyone who has any questions, feel free, put them in the chat. Feel free to just unmute. There's a raise hand feature if we want to use that as well. The floor is yours. So a little bit of time waiting for the first pickle out of the jar, the first question.
Hey, Kim, do you ever think that someone is multi-motivated? So, someone might not always be just one of the main motivations, but maybe several.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And actually what we find is that varies too. So I can be a person who has maybe one or two simple drivers that's all I really care about, and I'm good if you give me that. And then there'll be folks that have 3 or 4 super strong drivers. And in that scenario, so in one scenario, the first one, it's a person who's dynamic and complex but has simple needs. Okay, so it's kind of the way to think about it. On the other side of that, if you have a person who has like 4 things they care really about, it's going to be hard for any one job to give them all of those things. So they have to sometimes own that themselves. There's only so much you can do, and then they have to kind of figure out, how do I fill this spot that I'm not getting in my job? Is that helpful, Matthew?
No, it's good. I really liked it. Thank you.
I think Michelle has a question.
Yes, hi.
Hi.
What do you do when it's your boss who is one of these types? I had a boss who was the comfort safety, and it really, they were a great person, but it really kept the company I worked for, from going forward and updating and actually staying with the times, and it really hurt us. So what do you do when that's the case?
That's fascinating. Well, there's a couple of things. One is there's only so much you can do, obviously, if you're talking about the top executive. And in that case, you almost need influence from like the board or somebody who, their peers. But that said, I love your point. There's kind of 2 things I was thinking about as you asked it. One is that leader is trying to set a culture that the rest of the organization doesn't. So that's a very interesting dynamic. So what we do, we talk about this a lot here at OKCNP, is not because we have an executive who's different than us. Please don't misunderstand me, but we talk a lot about leading from the middle. So even when we don't have authority, we set the culture the way we want it to be in our circle. And we do so proudly, right? While also supporting what the other part of the culture is wanting to do. So that way we say, look, we can't wait around because other folks aren't going to do this. So we're going to do this, and we're going to make it happen. So I would just say that the recommendation there is to empower the people where they are to do what they need to do through your leadership, and role modeling that, this is how we do this in our department. And that's really all you can do, is just keep leading from the middle.
Great, thank you. And just a really quick book recommendation, How to Lead When You're Not in Charge. That was very helpful to me.
I have another one too. That's a good one. This is in the book I picked up recently just because I wanted some ideas. I'll show you.
On camera.
It says Love 'em or Lose 'em. And it was easy to find. So if you just type in love, and it has 26 engagement strategies for busy managers. So it just has these, let me see if I can see what, so they talk about mentors, they talk about values, truth. It's got some cool stuff in it. So if you're kind of at a place where you could use a fresh idea or two, that might be a good one for you as well. Heather, I'm looking at your question. Can you share about different people? Oh, that's a great question. Actually, what I would first want to say is I would want my board to be very diverse, and I hope I can have, every type of person on my board. So that's the first thing I want to think about. I think that we're always wanting to find a good match for our skill set. And certainly if we're serving on a board, we want it to be a board where the mission matters to us. I mean, that's critical. But I also understand, I think what you're getting at is that sometimes board service can be frustrating because of either they're too slow to act, or they're not a working board and they tend to just, rubber stamp everything. Or is that kind of what you're getting at, Heather? I want to make sure I'm understanding your question.
Yeah, absolutely. I know there's different types of boards, from working to rubber stamp to primarily being on there to advise / give money to something. But I imagine different types of, people who are motivated in certain ways would love to gravitate towards some type of board. So when we're thinking about what motivates us, is there a particular thing we should be thinking about, to dodge something or look for, ask particular questions when we're looking at board service that would help both the board and the organization and the person trying to be on the board?
I think there's a few things I would do if I were going to get on the board. I would ask kind of the status of their bylaws and such. I would certainly be looking at their 990 information and making sure that I was dealing with a stable organization, because that can get, unless I'm a change agent and I want to go in and fix. So you can kind of do some of that homework on what is the status of this organization that I'm going to be working with. But then I might also, if I really wanted to know, I might inquire about what the onboarding process is. That will tell you a lot about how a board functions. So the onboarding process, and I might ask about what a board meeting looks like. And the primary thing you want to know there is, are we spending a lot of time talking about what's already happened, or are we having generative conversations about the future and about moving an organization in a particular strategic way? That will tell you a lot about a board too, because the boards that don't have generative conversations at their meetings, the meetings are extremely repetitive. It just doesn't, there's no juice. There's not as much juice. So if you're looking for a board where you can actually get in there and roll your sleeves up and all of that, then I would ask those questions.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Actually, I had a question about if you found any trends with motivations in terms of generational differences or any sort of other demographic differences such as that.
I don't know of any major trends demographically speaking, other than some age-related things that I think fit with the changes that generations, the different lifestyles that we have. So that's one of the reasons I brought up the work-life balance thing is huge for Gen Z and millennials. And I would say as we age, we probably lean a little more towards the safety side of things. But that's not true of everyone either. So I don't know that I have any great trend stories to tell you about that.
Hi, I do have one question, Kim. So we talk about motivating and engaging our team members. Right now, one thing that I'm seeing is we're kind of in this mix of COVID vaccines, mask mandate, will we get tested? So there's a lot of unknown with a lot of organizations of what direction are they going to take. What advice do you have for keeping those team members engaged and motivated during this time of unknowing of what their organization is going to do?
Yeah, that's a good question, because I'm sitting here thinking I've got some of that uncertainty myself. I think everyone does, don't they? The critical thing about change and the critical thing about the anxiety it causes is communication. So the first thing we need to do when people are feeling uncertain, and which we all have been for 18 months, is just keep communicating what we do know, what we don't know, what plans we do have, and what plans will work. Just constantly communicating to folks so that they trust we have a handle on it. They know they can ask us questions. They know they can come to us, and maybe even trying to, again, if we know our team, trying to think ahead on what it is that they're worrying about so that we can address those things as we go. That's really the only way to deal with people who have discomfort with change is communicating. I would also say we need to listen. And when people tell us what they need, we need to do something about it. Either saying, I literally cannot do that for you, and giving them a chance to go somewhere else, or let me see what I can do, and making baby steps as you go. but don't hold people in limbo if you know what's going on. That's where the problems come, is that making people just wait forever with nothing. And that's when we lose them. So I just be very clear and honest. In the nonprofit sector, we preach transparency. We have to have transparency in the nonprofit sector. So when you live it all the time, you become really comfortable with it, and you find how powerful it can be when people know you're giving them the real story every time. That's the best advice I have, I think, for that.
Perfect. That's great information. Thank you.
You're welcome. Question here. It says, in general, if you're constantly struggling with someone, when do you move on and walk away? Here's, y'all are going to get me to go on rants, but here's what I would say about that. If someone is not meeting expectations, that's on me. If someone reports to me and they're not meeting expectations, that's on me. I have to either find a way to get them up to speed and get them working, or I need to help them find another opportunity. And by that, I mean letting them know it's not going to work. Okay. So the constant struggle is absolutely something that happens, and we've all been in that situation. And it could be the person is just literally not the right person for the job. And so if that's true, then we have to help them figure that out and get out the door so that we can find someone that is. That's that accountability thing of leadership. But I think it is appropriate to give people a chance, but we have to own that. We have to say, here are the 5 things I need you to work on in the next 3 months. Doing the actual communication and holding the standards and making sure they understand what is expected of them. And then it's on me after that to make those tough calls. I hope that helps, William. But if I'm a year later still complaining, it's time to make a decision. Either about my own failure in this, or the fact that they're just not going to make it.
Okay, we're coming up on about 5 minutes left of our scheduled time. So does anyone have any last questions for Kim? Okay. Well, this was a great session. Thank you so much, Kim, for sharing your time with us this evening. I have 2 important things for everyone who attended tonight. So firstly, I'm going to put Kim's presentation PDF in the chat if it will let me. It might be a little too big, so it may not actually let me put it in the chat, but we'll send it out via email. So ignore that message I just sent.
I think that's the problem I was having earlier when I was trying to do it.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm glad it's not just my computer. That's okay. So we'll get that out to you all. Also, as always, those of you who are here to complete the required training for a new board assignment, don't forget to fill out this survey. This will also go out in an email, but if you want just easy access, I just put it in the chat. And give us your thoughts. Any final questions? I don't know if Kim, you want to if you're comfortable putting contact information, or if anyone has any follow-up questions for you after this session, they can either direct that to Wendy. You all know Wendy at Leadership Tulsa, or Kim, I don't know if that's, I'm offering up your email for everyone.
Got it.
But okay, that's great. Thank you so much. But with that, again, thank you all for coming tonight. Thank you so much, Kim, one more time. And I hope you all have a fantastic evening and great rest of your week.